Okay, we're good.
All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the May meeting of the Western North Carolina Linux Users Group, or whatever we call ourselves. Today we have a presentation. So I will let Dan proceed with that. Unless Dan says otherwise and just has to see a room of smiling faces, I suggest we all just kill our video and of course audio, while he is presenting, just to keep things as efficient as possible. But I will do that right now and hand it off to Dan.
Okay, thank you, Brent. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen and do the entire screen. Share. And should be sharing now. So let me, first thing I want to do is go to the presentation. Can everybody see the presentation screen?
Yes.
Okay, all right, let me start the slideshow itself. Okay, all right, so my name is Dan Calloway. If we got people in the future watching this video, and I'm a member of the Western North Carolina Linux Users Group, Asheville. And today's presentation is going to be on a product that I've been using now for about a month. Happened on it by accident, I think. I may have Googled it, but it's called MeshCentral, and it's basically a help desk application, although it can be used for remote work and that kind of stuff as well. What I'm going to do is the presentation. I'm going to give a slide presentation, a short one, to introduce you to the product. And then I'm going to follow that with a live demo of MeshCentral on my computer. My desktop computer is the MeshCentral server. And then I've got several ancillary devices that are connected to it via the LAN. I haven't gone out on the internet yet with this, but it's entirely possible to do so, obviously, for help desk purposes. And that's a LAN-WAN hybrid mode. I've got it in LAN mode now. And so I'll do a live demo of that and then follow that with a Q&A opportunity. So if anybody wants to ask questions and have me, I'll answer those questions best I can. And having said that, if you do have questions, rather than interrupt me, it would be best if you could just hold your questions, if you write them down or whatever, to the end, and then that'll be done in the Q&A section. We'll get through this much quicker. Hopefully this presentation will not last more than 45 minutes to an hour. All right, so let's get started. All right, MeshCentral's developer is this guy right here. His name is Ilian St. Hilaire. He is a principal engineer for software, and he is a software engineer as well, also a public speaker, and he hails from Portland, Oregon. He is responsible for developing MeshCentral, which happens to be an open source remote monitoring and management software app. Very good one, as a matter of fact. And it also supports Windows. And so it has a hardware-based remote management tool or platform called Intel AMT built into it. I don't run Windows, so I haven't used it or looked at it. So I will not do anything with it today other than just mention it. Ilian St. Hilaire was a principal engineer for 16 years at Microsoft. He's got extensive expertise in cloud development and software architecture and network security. He authored remote management software that's got over 6 million downloads to date. And this particular software is used by Fortune 500 companies. He has authored 21 patents, received 2 Intel Achievement Awards and 10 Intel Awards for public speaking. So he's a pretty well-known guy in the software community. He is fully bilingual, English and French, and he's a citizen of the United States, Canada, and France. All right, so what is MeshCentral? MeshCentral is a web-based application. It uses something called WebRTC, real-time communication, You access the platform via the web, any browser connected to your LAN, and it utilizes something called Node.js to accomplish remote desktop management and monitoring. It was further developed by Intel in conjunction with Alien. It is open source, and it is released under the Apache 2.0 license. Doesn't cost you anything to use it. I'm running it, like I said, as the server rather from my desktop computer. It provides real-time access. It's ideal for managing remote workforces and distributed IT environments. The remote desktop management offers the following. It offers file transfer, so you can transfer files between computers, between the server and other computers in a very effective manner. It offers system monitoring. I use it to monitor 2 laptops, 2 Raspberry Pis, a virtual machine, and 1 other machine. It has power management capabilities built into it, and it has security as well that it offers. It is compatible with Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and Android, so it's cross-platform. It does not offer support for iOS at the moment, but I think that's something that Alien is looking at in the future. Good luck with Apple in doing that, but it doesn't offer iOS support yet. The homepage for this project is it's a secure site called MeshCentral.com, and the info page is where you can get more information on it. Some of the key features offered by MeshCentral are RDM, Remote Desktop Management, file transfer and sync, as I mentioned, system monitoring and reporting, power management, and also offers Wake on LAN. So if you've got Wake on LAN set up on your devices, you can use MeshCentral Server to wake those devices up in order to monitor and manage those. The other thing that I've got set up too with my server is 2-factor authentication on my Data Pioneer account. It's very effective with my Google Authenticator to get in. So in addition to the password to get in, the username and password, I also use the Google Authenticator and 2FA to get into it. It has SSL built in. Initially, you can do self-signed certificates, but if you want to go out on the internet, you can use a Let's Encrypt SSL certificate to do that. I haven't done that yet. I plan to do that in the future. And the reason I haven't done it is right now I'm running MeshCentral Server as an installation on my platform, which is AVL MXE Edition, AV Linux MX Edition. And it's difficult to set up the Let's Encrypt. So what I'm going to do is in the future, I'm going to set up a MeshCentral Server as a Docker container application, and then use Nginx Proxy Manager to take my domain that I own, dancalloway.com, and create a subdomain of that. I'm going to call it meshcentral.dancalloway.com and use a Let's Encrypt certificate to make that secure. It also offers user management. Network management advantages are things like it provides a centralized platform for managing devices, very effective in doing that. It offers a wide range of features. It does allow administrators to remotely manage and monitor the devices as sysadmins. So this MeshCentral or server or MeshCentral itself, the platform, can be used by individuals for their home LAN, which is what I'm using it for, or you can use it for small business, medium-sized business. You can also use it for enterprise. You can even connect it to Active Directory domain services as well in the enterprise. It reduces the need for physical access to the machine because you can do it remotely for management and monitoring. It minimizes the downtime because you don't have to physically access the machine. It provides a scalable solution, and Ilian is working on scaling up MeshCentral in the future. It can be adapted for, as I said, to small to medium-sized businesses and enterprise. Some of the benefits for network management are improved efficiency, enhanced security, reduced downtime, increased flexibility, and of course, cost savings. Client-server architecture, it's preferable to have the server component installed on a standalone server platform, a box. Okay, I have it on my desktop computer, so I'm using a desktop operating system in addition to MeshCentral, but it's best if you have it installed on its own on server platform. It provides administrative tools for the administrator. It has a client component that's called the Mesh Agent, and that gets installed on each device to be managed. There is a Mesh Agent for Windows, which are exe binaries, and then there's a Mesh Agent for Linux, BSD, and Mac OS, which are scripts that get installed as the Mesh Agent. I'll show you that when I do the live demo. It allows the server to remotely access and control the devices. The MeshCentral server and the agent communicate over the LAN and or the internet using a secure WebSocket protocol. It enables real-time access to the devices and control of those devices through the WebRTC that monitors that, and the Node.js. It provides scalable solutions for managing devices and is ideal across organizational types and sizes. The server-side requirements is it requires MeshCentral, that is, requires a modern web browser. So Chrome or Firefox or Brave will suffice. Don't know about Bing or some of the other Windows-based platforms, web browsers, but modern web browser should work. Some server components should be installed with the following minimums. It should have 2 CPU cores, 4 gigs of RAM, and 16 gigs of storage space. My system has 16 gigs of RAM, got 700 and plus gigs of storage space, and 2 CPU cores, so I'm well within the minimum requirements. It also requires a valid SSL certificate, either being self-signed, which you trust, okay, which should not be trusted if you go out on the internet. And that's for the secure communication with the client devices. It can be run as a Windows service or as a Linux daemon. I'm currently running it as a Linux daemon, which means I can close the terminal and it still runs. And I can control it using the system control command in Linux, the systemctl. It's highly customizable, and its customization is controlled through something called a config.json file. And you'll see some of that customization when I show you the live demo. It can be extended using APIs and plugins, and so that's the scalability of the product. The server-side requirements continue here. So MeshCentral agent is the client component of the MeshCentral server. It is cross-platform compatible, as I mentioned, and it's installed either as a service or standalone executable file. Minimum system requirements for the product itself is it's for Windows, it can be installed, the server rather, can be installed on Windows Server 2016 or later, Windows 10, Windows 8.1. And for Linux, MeshCentral server can be installed on CentOS 7 or 8, which I know CentOS is now deprecated, so Rocky Linux and Alma Linux and some of the others should not have a problem. It is should be installed on Debian 9 or 10 as in 11. I meant to add 11 on there. Fedora 29, 30, 31, and 32, and then Ubuntu 16.04 LTS, 18.04 LTS, 20.04 LTS, or other compatible distro. And the MeshCentral agent can be installed on macOS High Sierra 10.13 or later, or Android OS as well. The installation procedures are fairly easy. I didn't have any problem installing it. You can go out on the website for MeshCentral and find the download for it, or the GitHub project Ilian St. Hilaire has. Or if you are running Ubuntu or another Debian-based system, you can install it by running first the command sudo apt install npm, and that is to install the Node package manager, which is required for the product since it's running Node.js. Following that, and after that installation, then you can create a directory using the make dir command, and I used MeshCentral as the directory that I created. You can call it anything you like. It doesn't have to be MeshCentral. You can install it, well, I did in my home directory, but you don't have to. You can install it anywhere you want it to go. Then you can run the next part of the installation, which is using the npm command, and you're doing an npm install MeshCentral. And what that does is that it goes out and installs about approximately 155 files that comprise the MeshCentral program itself. Following that, then to get it started, you can run node MeshCentral /node_modules /MeshCentral if you want to run the non-service install to start the application. Or you can do a node MeshCentral node_modules MeshCentral -- install flag or switch to install the service installation. I forgot to mention, before you actually launch this, the first time you do this, you want to run node MeshCentral node_modules MeshCentral -- cert and the IP address of your server. So you'd need to get the IP address of your server, which for me is the IP address of my desktop computer, and run that command. That's the first time only. You don't need to do that ever again. And that's to install the self-signed SSL certificate. Sorry, I skipped over that. Then once you get it installed, it's going to tell you where MeshCentral's server has been redirected from an HTTP platform to the HTTPS platform, since you've got the self-signed certificate. And so what you need to do is launch your web browser and go out and navigate to the IP address of your server, to the port that it tells you that it's running on. And for me, that port is 443. And the IP address of my server, which is 192.168.1.248. And I go out there and I can then launch the program. You can visit our website at wnclinuxusersgroup.com /MeshCentral open source RMM application, which is an article I wrote that gives you detailed instructions on how to install and run this product. All right, and so for the first account, once you get it installed and you log in for the first time, the first account will be the admin account. And then as administrator, you can add as many users as you like. So if you're on your particular LAN, if you've got it just LAN-based, if you had several users that were accessing it via their web browsers, you could set them up with their own account and give them specific privileges, partial privileges. You would not necessarily want to give them full administrator privileges. And as I mentioned earlier, you can also install MeshCentral server and MeshCentral as a Docker or Docker Compose, and I intend to do that later on my Raspberry Pi, and that will simplify the installation and the deployment process because it's containerized. And also I can take advantage of the Nginx proxy manager. All right, so for customization options, real quick here, the SSL certificate is one way to customize it because you can do a Let's Encrypt certificate. You can choose the port number you want to run MeshCentral on so that you can customize it that way and avoid interfering with other ports that you might be using. But if you don't do anything with that, MeshCentral is smart enough to see that a port is being used, won't try to use it, and it'll skip it and move on to the next port. For authentication, you can do customizations by configuring authentication settings, including things like multi-factor authentication, LDAP, Active Directory integration, and user permissions. You can also customize the product by including plugins, like installing and configure the plugins for various things. I haven't gotten into the plugins yet and taken a look at those, including options for third-party integrations and custom scripts. One of the nice things about this product that I like is when you do like a desktop connection between the server and other devices, it doesn't require third-party products. It's all built into MeshCentral. So you don't need like a VNC client or a server or anything like that. Okay, so you can also customize with notifications. So you can tell the MeshCentral product that you want to receive alerts and reports about things like device status, security events, and other important metrics. You can use it for monitoring, customizing it that way to track device performance, device health, device usage, and proactive alerts about potential issues on your devices. MeshCentral also servers provides an API for developers. So if you're a developer, you can get an application platform interface and connect it up for things like automated tasks, command line tools for our advanced configuration, and management of the product. Some of the use cases for remote work using MeshCentral is it's a powerful tool for remote device management. It's also powerful for remote access. It's good for being able to transfer files easily. And it also is useful for system monitoring and reporting. You can use it for power management. You can actually, as a system administrator, you can enable IT teams to reboot the device or server. You can shut down devices with the product remotely. You can wake up devices remotely as needed. It has the web-based interface, of course, and so it's easy to use and access anywhere whether you've got an internet connection. And it makes MeshCentral ideal for remote work environments. Some use case for system administrators, it provides centralized device management and monitoring capabilities like a help desk environment. I've used help desk environments in the past when I worked for county government, and this product is, I think, superior to what we were using then. Key features include things like remote access. Patch management is one other big feature, so you can install patches remotely. Monitoring and reporting, so the help desk functionality, for instance, makes it easy for system administrators to identify issues on devices and to track performance over time. And then last but not least, future development of MeshCentral. Some of the key areas that Elian is looking at are things like enhanced monitoring and reporting, improved scalability of the product itself, integration with other tools and services, improved user interface, system administrators, managed service providers, and then continued support for new devices and platforms. If you want to get additional information, you can go to the project website for Elian, which is ilianst.github.io/MeshCentral. And by the way, at the end of this presentation, you're going to be emailed on our platform at Google platforms. You're going to be emailed a copy of this slide presentation. All right, so that's the slide presentation. All right, let me close this and let me go out to the live demo portion of the presentation. And so let me get onto the platform here and go up to, can everybody see the DP Network MeshCentral interface?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so this is how I log into it. And so if I click on MeshCentral, it's going to prompt me for a token, which is my two-factor authentication. So let me get on my Google Authenticator and put in the code. And boom, I'm in. All right, so this is the MeshCentral product. This is MeshCentral server. This is my devices on the My Devices interface. And as you can see, I have 1, 2, and this is the server here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 devices that MeshCentral server, which is this guy right here, which is my, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
We can indeed hear you.
I
Dan?
got disconnected somehow. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Goodness gracious. Hello, can you hear me?
Hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
I got disconnected somehow. I don't know how that happened, but I got disconnected.
Could hear you. You couldn't hear us.
Yeah, we can hear you the entire time.
Oh, you could. Okay. I could not hear you. Probably my hearing aids did something to me. So anyway, let me continue on. All right. So as you can see what I've done here, this is the desktop computer that I'm on. It's MeshCentral server. And I can click on it and I'll go out and you can see that there's information like the group it belongs to, which is the MeshCentral server group. Here's the operating system name, the host name, which is the IP address of the device. I put a description in. You can change that over here if you like, make changes. The agent that's being used to connect me to the server here is the Linux 64-bit agent, which is a script. This is the operating system that's running. It's called AV Linux MX Edition 21.3 Consciousness. The active user on the device, the server is Data Pioneer, that's me. And I've asked it to notify me about connections and disconnections on this device as well. All right, I can, let me go back out here before I get into the other part. And you can see what I've done is I've set up various groups. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different groups that I've set up. Now, you don't have to do that. You can just have one big group, but you can set up groups based on individual users. You can set up groups based on, if you're a business, based on divisions or departments within your small business or corporate environment, or you can set it up by device. And what I've done is chosen to set it up by device. So I've got a group set up called Laptop Group, which has these 2 laptops in it, my Acer Aspire and my Dell Latitude 6400. This is a 15-year-old laptop, by the way, running Zorin OS, and it's running like a new machine. I've got another server group called Server Group, MeshCentral Server Group. I've got a third group called the Single Board Computers Group, which has my 2 Raspberry Pis in it. And then I've got a last group, which is the Virtual Machines Group, running Zorin OS as a virtual machine. Now, how did I create the groups? Well, you can click on Add Device Group here, and you can go up and give it a name, put in here, toggle down what kind of group type you want, either managed using a software agent, or if it's Windows, you can do an Intel AMT, local devices, or no agent, whatever, and then click OK. And then that creates the group, and then you can add the devices by clicking this button, which is either in any group called Add Agent. All right. And then you can either add a Windows-based operating system device. And if you do that, you come down here and you can grab either the 32-bit or the 64-bit exe files and tell it that you want your installation to be either background interactive, background only, or interactive only. All right. And, or like myself, you can do Linux and BSD. And when you do that, then you are presented with a script based on your setup when you install the product. And you just click this copy button right here. And that copies the script out. And then you can just SSH into the device, or however you want to deliver that to the device itself. And then as administrator, you run that code on the device. And once it runs, it actually brings the device into the group. And then it tells you that its agent is running and it's powered. So all of these are running the agent and that they're all powered up. Okay, they're all alive. Okay, so let's get on to one of the devices. So let me get on to my Acer Aspire laptop. And so here's all the information about that. And if I click on the desktop tab and go out and connect, it's going to connect you to my desktop for the Acer Aspire. You can see how quickly that connected me, by the way. And this is not a static website. This is or web browser. This is an actual connection to my laptop using WebRTC. Now I can go up here to the right to where you see the hand, and I can click that button and I can expand it out to a bigger screen. Okay, so I can get more control over this. Or if I go out and reduce it again, hold the shift key down and then click the same button, it brings it up to very full screen. This is like I'm sitting on the machine itself. All right. And so having done that, this is a fully functional connection. All right. So I can connect here, go out on internet. I can go to Proton VPN, fire up the Proton VPN, do a quick connect. And now once that connects, I would be connected VPN on my laptop. So I'm actually connected to another IP address on that laptop. And I did that through MeshCentral on the MeshCentral server. So let me go ahead and disconnect that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and reduce this and get off the desktop. I'm going to disconnect from the desktop. Now, if I click on the terminal tab, all right, I can simply hit the connect button and I will connect as root to the device. But, you know, sometimes I don't want to do that. So what I'll do is I'll disconnect and I'll right click and connect as either a root shell, which I just did, or a user shell or a login shell. So I want to connect as a login shell. So I'll right click and left click login shell. And so for this Acer Aspire, Data Pioneer is the user name. Password, I'll put that in. And I'm connected. And so this connects just like you would if you SSH'd into the device, but it's not SSH. Okay, it's connecting through WebRTC. And so what I can do here, once I'm connected, I can run commands in the terminal just like I was sitting on the device itself. And so I'm going to run a sudo apt update, sudo apt upgrade, and put in the password. And let it run. Okay, am I still connected? Can you guys still hear me?
You are, and we can.
Brent, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Brent, can you still hear me?
Dan, we can hear you.
All right, I'm going to make the assumption you can still hear me because I can't hear anybody. It's probably my hearing aids doing it. Okay, so now I have completed the update on my Acer Aspire laptop. What I can do here is I can go out and go back to the General tab and click on Notes. And I can type in here, these are the notes for this particular device. And I can say I've updated system on, this is 5/6/23. Right, and I'll copy that before I post it. So I click OK. All right, so that copied that note. So the purpose of that is if I come back in here later after I go out to another machine, or if somebody comes in behind me, they can click on the Notes tab and see that the last date that any action has been taken on this machine was on 5/6/23. All right. But I can use it as well to do things like log an event. So I can right click on log event, right click and paste that same information in here, and then click OK. And what that does is it goes out and it actually logs that event in the individual event log for the device itself. And so that means that I can go back and now and see that I updated the system on 5/6/23 at 12:48:16 p.m. All right. Okay, so another feature, let me go back to terminals and disconnect there. Another feature is files. And so if I click connect, you can see all the file structure here on the device. If I go back to home and Data Pioneer, you can see all the file structure here for this device. And what I'd like to do is I'll show you real quick. If I get on my MeshCentral server and I go up to Files, and if I connect, then I can, if I want to copy this file here called collatsfunction.md, what I can do is left click on it, go out here and copy it, save it. All right, so it's copied out to there. And then I'll get back on the machine, the Acer Aspire laptop, get back on the files, connect back to it again, and then I can do an upload, and then I can choose files, go out to the downloads on the server, to the file I just copied up, which is, what was it called? Collats. Can't find it. I know I copied it up there. I think I copied it up to the downloads folder. There it is, collatsfunction.md. I'm blind today. All right, so I can highlight it and click open, and it puts the file in here, okay, as the upload. And if I click OK, then it will upload that file right there. It uploads the file to this device via the server itself. And so that's the file transfer capability built into this and built into the machine. All right, and so the events here, like I said, I mentioned before, I'm not going to show you that because I've already shown it to you. And then the details here is a option that you can look at the in gross detail, all the details about the device, the motherboard, BIOS, networking, mesh agent, operating system, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so if I go back out and come across down here, this is, of course, my account, and I can set up the authentication application, the authenticator, using that. And I'm not going to do anything here because I'll remove it if I do, but that's how you do it. If I want to manage security keys, if I've got keys, I can add a key here through this interface. I can manage backup codes, and so these are all the backup codes for the installation. In case I lose my username and password, I can get in that way. I can view previous logins and login attempts. If somebody tried to log in and failed, I will see that here in this interface. And for localization settings, I can either tell it to use the browser values, or I can go in and select another language. For dates and times, I can do the same, browser value or another language. For notification settings, here I can have it notify me for various things or not notify me if I uncheck it. All right, so for changing email address, I can change that here if I like. I want to change my password, I can do that as well. Load the old password, put in the new, and do it that way. I can delete my account if I wanted to, but of course I don't want to. And create login tokens. And so what I can do here is if I can give this token a name, I could say like, let me in. And I can say, I want this to expire, in 30 minutes. Click OK. And then anybody that has that token can log in to my MeshCentral server for 30 minutes. And then after that, they're logged out. All right. So let's go down the list here. This is the My Events again. Here is the My Files. So I can work with the files through this interface. Here is the My Users. And so I've got one user set up called Test User. So I can look at it from a perspective of another user with partial capability. This individual's got partial permissions, as you can see off to the right. And then finally on the My Server, I've got this interface here. I've got a nice little graphical setup here. So if I can look at CPU load for 5 minutes, 1 minute, 5 minutes, and 15 minutes of CPU load. Anything under 2 here is great. Available memory, I've got 7.6 gigabytes free and 15.5 gigabytes total. I'm running a virtual machine, so it's using some of my memory. This is not a memory intensive or a memory hog application. Just wanted to mention my virtual machine that I'm running. All right, so I can download a server backup. So I can click that button, go out and click save, and it will save the backup of the server for that particular backup. And then if I need to, I can click on the restore back from a backup and go out and choose the file here and then click OK, and it will back up the server to the previous backup. I can go out and check the server version that I'm running. Current version is 1.1.5. If that's different from the latest version, I can update the server based on that. And then the show server error log. Right now, I have no errors on the server. All right, but if I did, they would show up here. All right, and so the last thing I would like to do is log out of the server and then log in as my test user. And so I'm now logged in as test user, and you can see that test user has connection to the MeshCentral server, and he is basically set up as my backup server operator. All right, so he has access to the server. He has access to create backups, and so he can do that through this interface. He can download a server backup. He can restore the server from a previous backup, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But other than that, he has no access to any of the other server groups other than the MeshCentral server group. All right, so let me log back out. And so that is basically, and that just touched the surface, guys. There's a lot more to this than that. I'm hoping that you could still hear me in this presentation. And so I'm going to break away from the presentation now and go with the Q&A session if anybody has any questions. So let me go ahead and get over here. And let me see if I can, let me disconnect from stop sharing my screen. And okay, so I should be off the sharing now. Can anybody hear me?
We can. Can you hear us?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so I guess you can't hear me, and so if I can't hear you, and hopefully you can hear me, but I'm going to disconnect altogether. And you can hear me, Larry? You can. I can't hear you guys, and that's probably because of my hearing aids. So the Q&A session is not going to go well if I can't hear you. Oh, there we go. I can hear you now. Say something, Gene.
Yeah, the voices in your head quit talking to you.
Yeah, they quit talking to me. Yeah, I see that chat. Okay. All right. I can hear you guys now too. So if anybody has any questions, hopefully, were you able to watch the rest of my presentation, by the way?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah, everything was fine.
Great. Okay. Anybody have any questions about MeshCentral that I can answer for you?
Eh,
No?
I've got a question, Dan.
Okay, Rusty.
I have never been an administrator, so I don't know. I've only experienced administrators running around trying to keep a medical clinical laptop maintained for a user, and that user was me. And it struck me that it was definitely labor intensive, but and I find it interesting that this you mentioned that this maintains a log, a separate log for the events that are occurring because of the administrator's presence, the administrator's actions. So obviously there's a new user on your client computer, and that new user is MeshCentral or the MeshCentral administrator. And so I'm thinking to myself here that probably one of the most ideal customers for an administrator is somebody who never tampers with their machine, never does anything exploratory and risky, and the only changes that ever occur in critical files show up in the log of the administrator. But this begs the question that I want to ask, and that is, does MeshCentral have tools that take a snapshot of critical applications that are installed, and even maybe the permissions that are associated with certain files for those applications? And then does it monitor the succession of snapshots that reveal that something has changed, including something may have changed that was not precipitated or instigated by the administrator as a user? So it just strikes me that would be an important thing about security, is not only to, not just to know what the administrator has done, but what has happened since the last visit, and who did it, and who are the other potential sources of change. So I'm just asking this as a general question.
Okay. Well, Rusty, to answer your question, yes, it can do that. I haven't gotten into all the ins and outs of the security end of this product. But the administrator is able to monitor users individually, and is able to monitor the devices by those users individually, and monitor their event logs, and monitor the users themselves. So yeah, I would have to say yes to your question. That yes, that is capable. Ability is built into MeshCentral to do that. I haven't gotten into it that deeply, because I've only been using this about a month, and I just really haven't gotten into the security end of it yet. But I have to say, with what I've watched with Ilian St. Hilaire's videos of things that he's doing with, he's got fairly extensive YouTube videos on this. Yeah, I would say, yeah, this is very capable.
Yeah, one of the concepts I'm describing, which I don't have enough understanding to really describe it, other than doing a snapshot which has certain parameters that that represent change, is somewhat like doing a checksum on any file of any sort. The checksum tells you that a change has occurred, and then I guess depending on the algorithm for how change is recorded, a person could perhaps be informed of where the change occurred in a snapshot. A snapshot might be an examination of certain features of many critical files, and I guess experts know what those critical files are. What are the executable files? What are the files that are configuration files that control behavior of applications? All those sort of things. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else have any questions about MeshCentral, the things that I presented or anything? Nope. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for allowing me to present today. And if you want to take a look at MeshCentral, I highly recommend it. I think it's a great product.
Thanks so much, Dan. Anything else going on in your world this past month?
No, basically been spinning up for this presentation, and I haven't really done anything much else with Linux, to be honest.
All right. So I guess we'll just continue on with everyone else. Again, thank you so much, Dan.
Sure.
Gene, what you got going on?
Oh goodness, I have really just been using it like a bandit, and everything seems to be working the way it should. I haven't had any real questions or anything. I was just thinking though that usually around this time in the cycle, I'm worried about trying to upgrade hardware, and it doesn't seem like there are, for me at least, any real compelling reasons to be upgrading hardware. I know Leander went to the newest version of the Mac thing, but just I haven't felt compelled. I don't know if anybody else has joined me in that feeling, but I haven't really felt compelled to get out there and grab the newest and greatest. So I'd be interested too to know if anybody has, and if they what their experience has been. So I'll let it go on from there.
Well, I can kind of reply to you, Gene, and I'm kind of in the same boat. I've had the same desktop for quite a few years, other than the fact that it keeps wanting to die when I'm doing video, which I don't know if that's a hardware or a software problem. It seems to be hardware because it's locking up pretty darn solidly. I have to hard reboot. Been using the same desktop for years. The laptop from work is been a Linux machine, and I've had it for 5.5 years, and it's we just don't. I mean, obviously, if you're a gamer, that's a whole other situation. But the most, how I interact with technology, I don't store stuff like I used to. I don't, things seem to have a much longer life cycle because I don't have to do new things with them. Again, I did just update my son's gaming computer for Christmas / graduation, and that's something that does require a refresh every several years for them. But for me, not so much.
Well, that was just the impression I had. So anyway.
Thanks, Gene. Larry?
Can you hear me now?
Indeed, I can.
I don't even have any new hardware like this. This is an old Dell Inspiron laptop. It came with Windows Vista on it, so you can tell how old it is. But I guess for upgrading, we keep upgrading software and going to the latest and the greatest. Everybody says because of security issues. So I decided I would try out a new version of MX Linux 21.3 and downloaded it. And I'm actually running it right now during this meeting. This is my first test, and it's worked the whole time. So it's pretty, I mean, for old hardware, had a few little glitches. Some of it had to do with the download because I'm only using 4 gigabytes of RAM. And the way I do things, it's hard to download. I mean, I downloaded it over Wi-Fi. He keeps talking about having trouble with his slow internet downloading like Mint, which they're like typical download. Like this is like 1.8 gigabytes, 2 gigabytes, and I would get close and then the thing would lock up because of the way I was running things. So what got around that was actually BitTorrent. You use I was using Linux Mint, and it has transmission in it, which works great with it. And I just downloaded 1.8 gigabyte using BitTorrent really easily. Didn't have any troubles with it. So that's one thing you might think about, Pete, when you're trying to download big files. They have a torrent files for MX Linux 21.3, for example. So that works great. So that's about what I have to say for right now. So I might chime in in response to other people's comments.
Well, Larry, I got something to say. I'm running AV Linux MX Edition, which is MX Linux in the background, and you're running MX Linux, and I have to say that's one of the best operating systems I've seen in a long time. And I got my tagline from my email. You may have noticed it. It says, "No one's perfect, but if you're running MX Linux, you're close."
Yeah, I've been using MX Linux also on, I have it on this laptop, but I've been running Mint also, but I have it on some other, some Lenovo computers that had various versions of Windows like 7 and 10 on them. But I noticed that I think it's MX Linux 18.3. So I went from 18.3 to 21.3. I guess that's fairly a few years, or, you know, that's about how often I think about updating or upgrading or whatever. But just on a sort of side issue where we were talking in the beginning about how everything these days has tech in it. So I guess maybe I shouldn't say anything, but maybe your hearing aids are part of this tech problem. Every time you get something put tech into something, now it's something else you have trouble with and try to debug and work on. Seems like, I mean, I got all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, especially when it fails, and my niece and other relatives say, "Here, Larry, help me out with this." Like it's my problem to fix all this tech stuff, which sometimes is hard. But anyway, that's my soapbox on the tech stuff.
I think my issue, Larry, is related to Bluetooth for the hearing aids. I don't think it has anything to do with the hearing aids themselves. It's the first time this has ever happened, actually.
Bluetooth is tech stuff.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So that's it for me for right now.
Well, thanks, Larry. Before I forget, Arnold says in the chat that he's got nothing new. Curly still doesn't have a microphone, so one of these days we'll hear from him and we'll all have a collective heart attack. All right, Leander, what you got going on?
The usual work stuff. We've got big, I guess, semi big happenings there with new leadership coming in. So everyone's crossing their T's and dotting their I's, and you know, making sure things are in good shape before they start on July 1. But new CIO. So that's just been, work has been crazy busy since about spring break. Let's see, I finished that. At work, we're setting up a new HPC cluster, that sort of stuff. Doing a lot of, since I've been shuffled more into an enterprise systems role from a networking role, I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I've been taking over a survey system in a little bit called RedCap. It's like an enterprise software package. So that kind of, that kind of just never-ending churn of stuff to do there. It's been a real kind of rough month personally, just with the cat. He was we had him for 15 years since he was a bottle baby, and then he just was fine with us, and then he suddenly went. So that's been real rough. What else? On a hardware front, I did get a wild hair and pre-order the. Even though I just bought the Mac, I'm a hardware hound. Since the tech layoffs, my side gig for some kind of has died down. I guess they're trying to cut costs, so I don't really get the kind of that stuff anymore. So I pre-ordered a framework. They just came out with an AMD version of their laptop, and it should be it'll be Q4. So I'll be bored with the MacBook before then, before it gets here. But if you're not familiar with framework laptops, they are They've got the little modules in the sides, and completely repairable, completely take apart. They offer Linux on it. I just got it bare with no OS. I'll probably put Fedora or Debian on it. I ordered the Ryzen 7 7040. So I'm gonna see how that does. That's a little bit more in line, being so user serviceable with what I like. My desktop's getting up there in years. It's a second gen AMD Ryzen, and it's Threadripper, but it's like a 2018 model, but it's still holding up. Probably the next thing, honestly, for replacement is the NAS box. I upgraded drives in it 2 or 3 years ago now, but the base system is a Haswell i5, which is getting up there. The problem is it's only maxes out at 16 gigs of RAM, and now that I'm doing a bunch of ZFS caching and stuff on it, if I could go to 32 or 64, that would help, and I could go back to running VMs on it. 16 is just not quite enough for that anymore. So I'm looking at